Hello there. Today I'm just going to be talking about these silent stroke heads put out by Remo. I'm quite impressed with them actually. I haven't put any of these on my kit before, but combined with the Zildjian low volume cymbals here, it's amazingly quiet. It probably reduces the volume by 80%, I'd say. You can still play, in fact you can still play rim shots like this and talk at the same time, whereas on a normal drum that would be deafening, right? Now I'm quite impressed, especially with the bass drum sound. It's definitely a low volume bass drum now, but it has that fullness to it, so it really feels like you're digging in, getting something out. So I can still talk at the same time. It's not very loud, right? I might even consider not wearing earplugs when I'm playing with the low volume heads. So I got this idea from Steve Smith, who's an amazingly talented American drummer. He's got the silent strokes on top, the normal heads underneath, and he puts a piece of bubble wrap inside the drum which rests on the bottom head for the toms, but not the snare. He doesn't put anything in the snare. That's fantastic. Love it. The snare is very responsive. You can do all sorts of rudimental things. It feels a little bit spongy, as these sort of mesh heads often do. You can tension it so it's not so spongy. Anyway, the best part about it is the bass drum, definitely. Toms are fantastic, and the snare drum is workable, especially if you tension it quite tight. Love using the low volume cymbals. I should have got these years ago. These are fantastic because they have the attack of a normal cymbal, but once again you can talk. So really good for teaching and practicing. And the crash, you can crash that as hard as you want and still talk, right? But it feels like it has a lot of give as a crash cymbal as well. So it's quite satisfying to play. Hi-hats, there's a lot of top end. Yeah, I mean, great for jazz still. Yeah. So for a practice setup, I'd recommend it, definitely. It's the best practice setup I've used, and it's far superior to playing on an electronic kit. Just in terms of playing jazz on the rubber cymbals, it gets a bit tedious after a while. So in terms of cost, what are we looking at? Well, you can get, I noticed on eBay, there's a Rech, R-E-C-H pack that includes cymbals and the silent stroke heads. And you can get them for $3.99. I think that's a really good price. I paid, I think, about $150 for these silent stroke heads, including the bass drum. Then the Zildjian cymbals, this pack here, costs about $500. So that's $650 for the whole, like to convert your acoustic kit to a practice or a silent kit. And that gets you like a 20% reduction in volume, which is fantastic if you're in a small house or you've got neighbors close by. If that sounds a bit too much, there are cheaper options available. The next best one is probably muffling it. I bought 2 cushion inserts, took all the stuffing out, put it inside the drums and just filled them up basically. And they still sound like toms, but I prefer that to putting the sound off pads on top, and it just feels like you're hitting this spongy rubber thing. I don't like the sound much either. Yeah, you can get the cushion inserts plus a bean bag for inside your bass drum. Just pad it all up in there, and that can cost you less than $60. So that's quite a cheap way of doing it, but it's still not as quiet as, it's probably only a 50% sound reduction, right? This is about 80%. I prefer that to the sound off pads. You can get a whole set of sound off pads for $200, and that includes pads for the cymbals, pads for each of the toms and the snare as well, and the bass drum. But I really don't like the feel of those sound off pads. They're too spongy, too rubbery, and when you hit the toms, it just sounds thuddy and sort of yuck. Anyway, there are some options. I'll leave that with you and have fun with it. Okay, see ya.